call while we're looking it up. Call at 856-261-9018 or give us an email, questions@bftbc.org. Say hello, ask a question, or simply comment. Acts chapter 19. Let's begin by reading verses 28 and 29 and 30, starting with verse 28 together. And when they heard these things, they were full of wrath, and cried out, saying, Great is Diana of the Ephesians. And the whole city was filled with confusion, having caught Gaius and Aristarchus, men of Macedonia, Paul's companions in travel, they rushed with one accord unto the theater. And when Paul would have entered into the people, the disciples suffered him not. Right, verse 28. Now, what is the situation here in chapter 19? What has just happened preceding these verses?
Well, they were in the one in the town center or somewhere, and they were having an uproar because they were going to do. They were those that worshipped the goddess Diana. They were idolaters. Felt like the gospel was a threat to.
All right. So did Paul agree with their idolatry?
No.
He didn't, did he? According to verse 26, what did they accuse Paul of in this verse?
Paul had turned them and gave them the gospel.
That's right.
But that he was against what they were doing in the idolatry.
That's right. And he said, these are no gods which are made with hands. And so preceding this, you remember in preceding verses, some of these people that had bad things, verse 19, for example, what did their bad books and their evil books that they burned up and got away, what was the worth of them?
50,000
pieces of silver. Now, silver today is $15 an ounce if it's today, but even if it's only $1, 50,000, that's $50,000. That's a huge amount. And they gave away because they did not go along with these books. They were evil books. But these people here that worship Diana, who were the ones that were against Paul especially?
The craftsmen.
The craftsmen
Made
the idols. Silver, that was their gain. They wanted much gain. See, they wanted gain, and these other people gave up whatever they had for the sake of the Lord. Yvonne?
They burned them. They didn't give them away. They burned them so no one else.
They burned them. That's right.
Influenced by them.
Absolutely. But they parted from them. In other words, they don't have it anymore. They left them. And these other. So one is gain and one is loss. The evil things were loss because they didn't think they were right. And these other people want to gain more money for idolatry, which is a bad thing. Pastor Dan.
That's what evangelism does. It changes people from inside.
Yes.
They're lost. They change and they turn away from the old life. And so that's what they were doing here. They revive people that are in the church, the believers, when they have revival, they change sometimes. Sometimes the church becomes, people that are Christians become stagnant and kind of dead and not very active in their thinking, their spirituality. And so when they're revived, they too change. And so you have a contrast between evangelism and revival. But here, evangelism, Paul was here preaching the gospel, and these people responded to the glorious gospel of what Christ had done for them on the cross of Calvary.
And before we get to verse 28, in verse 27, what was said to be true if this continues?
The craft is in danger.
Craft is in danger, and the goddess of Diana should be despised, and whom all the Asia in the world worship. So it was quite a wide idolatry, wasn't it? Not just simply Asia, which would be Asia Minor, now Turkey, but also the whole world of that day worshiped this terrible idol, Diana. Then in verse 28, when they heard these sayings, now who do you think that they would be involved there? Who were the ones that were listening to these sayings?
People around them.
People around them. Those probably that worshipped Diana, the goddess of Ephesus there. Great as the Diana of the Ephesians. And they were the people that heard these things, and they were horrified. What was their reaction emotionally?
They were full of wrath.
Right, confusion and full of wrath. What is wrath?
Carried on, anger.
They got all upset.
All upset. And it's beyond any control, all upset. And of course, confusion. What is confusion?
Confundidos.
Confundidos, that's right. Full of wrath, and they cried out. What was their cry? What is their motto as they...
Praise Diana the Ephesians.
And it's interesting, full of wrath and cried out. And then in verse 29, the whole city there was filled with what? Confusion. So what did they do? Who did they catch?
Gaius
and Aristarchus. Who were they? Who were those men?
They were people from Macedonia.
Macedonia.
So a different area.
And did they know Paul?
What did you say who they were?
Gaius and Aristarchus, verse 29.
They were Christians.
Did they know Paul? Yes, they were.
Green area.
Yeah, they traveled with Paul.
Macedonia, up here in the green area, Macedonia. That's right. That's Macedonia.
As opposed to Asia Minor.
So Asia Minor over here. So they were a little bit distant. They traveled. They knew Paul. That's right.
They were companions with him in trouble.
They were with him in trouble, and
They
so
were in the confusion in the theater in the.
Yes. So what did these people in that big city? The whole city was filled with confusion. The whole city. So it was a tremendous confusion. And who'd they catch? These two men, Gaius and Aristarchus. Where'd they come from? Macedonia. Okay, that green part up there. And Paul's companions in travel. And so what did they do after that in verse 29?
They went into the theater, so they brought Gaius and Aristarchus into the theater.
All right. They caught him and entered into the theater. What do you think the theater was like?
Amphitheater.
Probably an amphitheater.
Outdoor amphitheater.
Probably was an amphitheater, outdoor amphitheater. And then in verse 30, what was Paul's original intent?
He wanted to go in there.
Why do you think he wanted to go into that
He
theater?
probably wanted to preach.
To preach and also maybe release these Gaius and Aristarchus and get them free. And what was the outcome of that? Did
The
they?
disciples said, "Don't go there."
That's right.
He wouldn't let him.
That's right. Suffered and not suffered, meaning what in this case? Did not permit. And see, they knew that there would be serious trouble if Paul, who's preaching us against the Diana of the Ephesians, well, they would probably kill Paul. I don't know what they're going to do with these other two, Gaius and Aristarchus. Let's read let's read 31, 32, and 33 together. And certain of the chief of Asia, which were his friends, sent unto him, desire him that he would not adventure himself into the theater. Some therefore cried one thing, and some another, for the assembly was confused, and the more part knew not whether they were come together. And they drew Alexander out of the multitude, the Jews putting him forward, and Alexander beckoned with his hand, and would have made his defense unto the people. All right, we read those three, right? So, certain of the chief of Asia. What would that mean, do you think?
Governors?
Probably governors and maybe mayors and so on and so forth, that's verse number 31, which were his friends. What friends do you think they would be?
Demetrius?
The chief's friends.
Maybe the chief of Asia's friends. No?
Paul's friends.
Demetrius'
friends?
No, certain of the chief of Asia. So they were the chief people of Asia, which were his friends, the most.
Think that'd be referring to Paul?
Antecedent is Paul.
Paul, to his friends, all right?
It says desiring him that he would not adventure.
Okay, so they were Paul's friends, all right? Certain of the chief, Paul's friends, sending him, desiring him not to. See, that's the same thing they told him before. Don't go into the theater. They did not.
He'd be trapped in there.
He'd be trapped, maybe killed, who knows? Not adventure himself into the theater. And so then in verse number 32, what was the nature of these people that were in the theater apparently?
Some cried out one thing and some another.
All right, so there were differences of opinions.
Confusion as far as conversation.
Yes, conversation was confusing.
Or yelling.
Yelling and screaming.
Just conversation.
And the assembly was confused. The whole assembly, all those gathered together, what to say
They
now.
didn't know what they were doing.
All right, now what was true with verse 32, the last part?
And the more part knew not what.
They didn't even know why they were there.
They didn't know what they were in there for.
No, they didn't know what they were coming together. See,
They were really confused.
that was quite. Now, a lot of times in big church business meetings, sometimes they don't know what they're doing either. They just come to meet and talk. But they did not.
You're supposed to come, right?
Supposed to come anyhow. That's right.
The people yelling at a football game.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. My oh my. Some for this team, some for this team. See, they back and forth.
And when you're at a football game, usually you know what team you're for.
That's right.
You hope so, anyway.
I hope so. That's right. But 31. We read 32, didn't we?
Yeah.
33. I mean 33. Yeah.
Yes.
So what did they do with Alexander?
They drew Alexander out of the mountain. They pulled him out of the mountain.
Yeah. So apparently,
Getting after him.
I don't know whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, but what did the Jews do with him?
Putting him forward.
What does that mean? Put him forward.
Well, could mean quite a few. They could be pushing him out in front of them, or.
All right. They probably wanted maybe a spokesman or something. And what did Alexander do once he got put out
He was
forward?
making hand signals.
Hand signals. And what did he want to do?
He wanted to make a difference.
Defense unto the people. Now, if he were a believer, one of Paul's people, what would he be defending?
The gospel.
Gospel, that's right. We're not
Do
sure.
you know who Alexander is? I forgot.
No, I don't know that it's mentioned here, but
Alexander's very
he's one of the multitude. And now, let's read verse 34,
Yeah.
35, and 36. Start with 34. And when they knew that he was a Jew, all with one voice about the space of 2 hours cried out, Great is Diana of the Ephesians. And when the town clerk had appeased the people, he said, Ye men of Ephesus, what man is there that knoweth not how that the city of the Ephesians is a worshipper of the great goddess Diana, and of the image which fell down from Jupiter? Seeing then these things cannot be spoken against, ye ought to be quiet and do nothing rashly. All right, so verse 34. Who was Alexander? What was his background? What was his national relationship?
Oh, wait, Alexander?
Alexander.
Verse 33.
Verse 34, yeah.
Oh, no, we don't know. Do we?
Well, in verse 33,
Right.
what was his background?
He was an instrument player. They drew Alexander out of the mountain, the Jews putting him forward.
And when they knew that he was a Jew, who's the he refer back to?
Alexander.
Alexander. So he was a Jew, wasn't he? So,
Okay, that's why the Jews are putting him forward.
Oh, okay.
No,
That's right.
Jews are- yes, okay.
maybe he was a believing Jew, like Paul was a Jew too, but so we don't know whether saved or unsaved. So what was, when they put his hand up going to make a defense of the people, but did the crowd let him make a defense?
Well, he spoke for
Who
2
was
hours.
Alexander anyway? I mean,
Well, he's just out of the blue. I don't know. He's just one of
he's
the.
not. He's not Gaius and Aristarchus.
No, he's some other person. Maybe one of Paul's friends.
Multitude.
Maybe you think it's from the multitude?
He was within the multitude.
Yeah.
Because he was in the theater.
Yeah, he's in the theater.
And they drew Alexander out of the multitude.
Out of the multitude. Yes, that's right. The Jews went forward.
He was a Jew in the mountain.
So, but apparently, he was going to defend Paul, right? As a Jew, did Jews worship idols?
No, I don't think so.
No, they're certainly against it. Thou shalt know the gods before me, not bow down to them. So the Ten Commandments are very clear on that. Some Jews may be
Right, for 2
apostate.
hours. They yelled for 2 hours.
So they didn't let him give a defense, but
Interesting.
in verse 34, what did they do?
So when they found out that he was a Jew, that
Yeah,
was
right.
when they, for 2 hours, they cried out.
Were they united there?
Yes.
But they were all confused before, didn't know why they were there. But once they got on this track, one
I
voice.
suppose Alexander was a good guy.
Well, it seems like it because
Well, at least
he was defending
understood-
Paul.
He understood what one God was, and
That's right.
Make no graven image.
That's right.
Whether or not he understood the gospel.
So this divided, confused people were all of a sudden united. What made them united?
They were against Paul.
What else? What is it?
Great as Diana.
Great is Diana, therefore Diana. Now, can you imagine yelling out for 2 hours, great is Diana the Ephesians? These were really pagan.
They wanted to sell him.
They don't even talk. Diana didn't talk.
No.
Just a little statue.
That's right, great is Diana. I tell you, were these people right or were they wrong in
They
there?
were wrong.
They were definitely wrong. Yes, Anna.
So I don't know if this is the same Alexander, and there's not really any way to
Coppersmith.
tell. No, I wasn't referring to
Go ahead, I want to hear.
the Alexander only occurs in 5 verses of scripture.
All
The
right.
name,
Mm-hmm.
but it occurs in 1 Timothy 1 verse 20, but I'll read 19 or 18. This charge I commit unto thee, Timothy, according to the prophecies which went before on thee, that thou by them mightst war a good warfare, holding faith and a good conscience, which some having put away concerning faith have made shipwreck, of whom is Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I have delivered unto Satan, that they may learn not to blaspheme. Now, it's said here in 1 Timothy 3, I besought thee to abide still at Ephesus. So, Timothy, when 1 Timothy was written, it seems like Timothy was in Ephesus. So, perhaps, I mean, it could be that this is the same Alexander, but then it could be a completely different Alexander.
All right.
I don't know for sure.
Okay, well, thank you for those references about Alexander. So, now, does the statement that great is the Dan of the Ephesians make that true statement? Is because they yell it for 2 hours. I don't know anybody's going to yell 2 hours. I know people in games, in football games, they scream and yell, but not continuously, but just when a good thing is made. Yes, Dave.
This proves and brings right out that the majority opinion can be wrong.
Yes.
And usually, a lot of times, that the Christians are the minority, and they get overridden.
Yes. Does shouting something make it true?
No.
Shouting? In fact, the louder you shout, sometimes the less ground you have. You have to yell and scream in order to make your point. And the truth of validity is many times lost.
People stop listening.
People stop listening, that's right. Then in verse, did we read 35 yet? Did we read 35?
Yes.
Yeah, we did. We
Yeah,
stopped.
okay, Vaughn.
In 34, when they were yelling out, they could have had a certain kind of cheers, like cheerleading. They say the same thing, but do it a different way.
Maybe.
There may be a whole thing that they could do all that for 2 hours.
Yeah. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's possible.
I'm trying to think how you would do it for 2 hours.
Okay, Pastor.
See, they wanted the people to be, they wanted the people to be for Diana.
That's right.
So that that's how they preached to them.
That united them, didn't it? One accord, yeah, Pastor Dan.
Yeah, people today do protest marches. That
Oh, yes.
quite a long
Right.
time, and they protest things. They can be taking turns and shouting together. I mean, it's just be an annoyance of a sort. That's part of what they were doing. Shouting.
Remember
Greatest
They're
Diana.
probably they wanted to silence him, I guess.
Remember the Black Lives Matter movement? Remember they had a big parade? And the big thing was, what about the pigs? You remember the pigs in a blanket?
Right.
Put them out, roast them and so on. They just kept over and over and over repeating that thing. They hated the police that was on their parade, see. Terrible. But yelling and screaming and united for evil doesn't make it right, does it? Then in verse 35, what happened with the town clerk?
They appeased the people.
What is a town clerk? What do you think that is?
Well, the town clerk.
The mayor.
Maybe like the mayor of the town clerk. What does it mean to appease the people? He appeased the people.
Tried to pacify them.
Okay, probably shut them up after 2 hours of yelling. Great as Diana as the Ephesians, they probably appeased them. They like quiet down.
They got hoarse.
And that's right. And then what did he say to them? Yes, horse. What did he say to them?
Ye men of Ephesus, what man is there that knoweth not how the city of the Ephesians is a worshipper of the great goddess Diana?
All right. Where did Diana's image come from, according to him?
The image came down from Jupiter.
The image.
And the image of the image which fell down from Jupiter.
Is that true?
We don't know.
Well, honey, could the images fall down from Jupiter?
Jupiter, it's not.
I don't know.
It's not a
It's
real.
not referring to the
This
planet.
has to
Not
do
the
with
planet.
the Roman
It's not the planet.
No, it's
philosophy.
not the planet.
Huh?
Jupiter is the supreme god of the
Supreme God, yes.
Yeah, the Roman thinking
Yeah.
concerning the gods that there was.
They had a fire fish.
But he fell down. It must have been up, right? Fell down. So Jupiter, wherever Jupiter was, they think he's in heaven if he's the god of the Romans.
I never knew that was that.
But is that possible for an image and a god to fall down from any place?
Yes,
No.
from someplace.
It's possible?
Yes.
Have you ever seen it before?
No, it's like
Never done
coming
before?
down from the sky. It's
Well, we hope it
the
won't fall
point
down.
of this.
See,
It's not
Oh, I
like
thought
falling
you
down
were
like
falling
Dagon.
down from the Tower of Babel.
oh no, it's not, from heaven.
Not like like Dagon falling down.
No.
Or falling down from the
In other words,
Empire State Building.
Jupiter's a planet.
I don't know what you're.
Well, in this case, probably the king of the god of the Romans. Jupiter is a planet too,
I think the heaven is.
but the point of it is, that you can't have a fake, phony god, Jupiter, whatever, create something of silver and drop it down from the sky. This is evolution. I don't know what's worse than evolution. It's a horrible idea. But that's what these people believe. That's what the town clerk said.
The Roman philosophy went into really crazy stuff.
Oh, yes.
Hercules.
That's right. A lot of different gods and goddesses, didn't it? That's right. And then, let's read 36, 37, and 30.
We did read 36.
Oh, right, 36. All right, okay. All right, now, what about these things cannot be spoken against? What does he mean by that?
You can't speak against Jupiter.
Well, can it?
Diana.
Can it be spoken against?
Well, it can't be in
What
the
does he
sense
mean?
that it can't be. Everyone's not going to change.
All right.
Just because Paul starts preaching and some people change their mind, everyone's not going to. It's still going to be predominant.
And maybe these things can't successfully be spoken against. People can speak. Paul was speaking against them. But gods can make.
Who's saying this and to whom?
This is the town clerk.
Okay.
He's saying to the people that are there in the theater. Then what did he suggest for this crowd that was yelling for 2 hours, greatest man of Ephesians? Shut up. Be quiet. That's right.
Do nothing rashly.
Be absolutely quiet. Nothing rashly. What does rashly mean?
In haste.
In haste. Yeah, Anna.
Get in a fight.
So the reason that they say that the wisdom of the great Gaius and Aristarchus which fell down from Jupiter is because that they believe that Diana was the daughter of Jupiter.
Diana, the daughter of Jupiter. Is that what they believe?
Yes.
Huh? Is that interesting?
Her twin brother Apollo.
The daughter of Apollo?
No, her twin brother was, never mind.
Her twin brother was Apollo.
Important.
I see. Good, you've got that all on your computer. That's good. All right, well, that's fine. So you have to be quiet. Do nothing rashly. They probably want to do things for them. Did we read 37?
No.
Let's read 37, 38, and 39 together. For ye have brought hither these men, which are neither robbers of churches, nor yet blasphemers of your goddess. Wherefore, if Demetrius and the craftsmen which are with him have a matter against any man, the law is open, there are deputies, and let them implead one another. But if ye enquire anything concerning other matters, it shall be determined in a lawful assembly. All right, so he was trying to quiet them down, do nothing rashly. In verse 37, what did he say in defense of these men? Paul. Not robbers of churches. Not blasphemers. Have you got it? What did they say? They simply said in the verse that the things are not made by, what is the verse about gods? Where did he say that? In verse 26, I think. Yeah, no gods which are made with hands. There be no gods which are made with hands. Of course, Jupiter must have made these with his Jupiter hands, which is false. But these are man-made gods, man-made deities. And the craftsmen made the deities. And so they're not blasphemers. He simply said that idolatry is not right. But they didn't talk about Diana specifically. And how do people get angry when you talk about against the atheists, for example? When Christians talk against the atheists, do the atheists get mad?
Sure.
They get angry. When the Christians talk against the faith or faithlessness of the Jews and the religious of the Jews, do the Jews get angry with that?
Sure.
What about the Mohammedans? Speak against Muhammad. And they're very angry. As in all these others, the Buddha and all the other religions, false religions. But these people have done nothing amiss. Then in verse 38, what does he suggest for Demetrius and his craftsmen, the ones that are making these idols?
When he talked to,
Verse 38.
He and his other craftsmen.
What did he suggest?
Plead one another.
Okay, if they have a matter, the law is open. In other words, take it before the law.
Sue.
Take it to court.
Yeah, take it to court. The deputies are there, and let them implead. What does implead mean?
It says sue in court.
All right, sue in court and make
Justice, arraign, accuse, bring charges against.
get the pleading like you do in a court case, and just take them to court and see what happens. The Roman court is still fair, and they will take care of it in the proper way. Did we read 39?
Yes.
Yeah, if we require anything of other matters, what do you suggest there? If there are other matters.
To take care of it in a lawful
Lawful assembly. In other words, do things decently and in order. Now, we don't go along always with the Roman law, but the Roman law in many instances was fair, it was honest, it was just, it was a good law. In fact, Paul used it, didn't he, when he was going to be slain by the Pharisees? What did he say? Appeal.
Appeal. That's the word, to Caesar.
Appeal unto Caesar. Paul is appealing to Caesar.
He was a Roman citizen.
The old saying about the difference between Paul and
Paul is appealing and
who's the other man?
I find Paul appealing and Peel appalling.
That's it. Peel is appalling and Paul is appealing. Norman Vincent Peel. All right, Peel. Okay, Norman Vincent Peel. So let them plead one another. All right, and then let's read verse 40 and 41. For we are in danger to be called in question for this day's uproar, there being no cause whereby we may give an account of this concourse. And when he had thus spoken, he dismissed the assembly. Day's uproar. What's an uproar?
This tumult, the confusion.
Tumult,
All
confusion.
these people gathering together in the theater.
And screaming out for 2 hours. That's a long time. So we call into question, in other words, other people, what are they going to do? What are the authorities might do? What does the Roman government may do?
Arrest him.
All right. Concerning, and they inquire, determine the law, call into question, probably maybe put them in jail, I don't know what, maybe fine them. There being no cause to be, what was there no cause? Yeah, excuse me, Anna.
So it was like the local government, like this town clerk, he was worried that the big shots were going to be like, well, why did you have a riot in your city?
Yes.
He wasn't going to have a valid explanation. So he's saying, he's calling off the riot and telling them to stop.
That's right.
What a good idea.
That's a good idea.
Try that here.
Yeah.
They could bring the soldiers into the town.
That's right. And really break it up, see?
Yeah.
So he's trying to keep peace and determine a lawful assembly, and then danger calling question, the uproar, being no cause. What does that mean?
No reason.
No reason that we may give an account of this concourse. Concourse meaning gathering together. All right. And verse 41, what did the town clerk then do after he'd spoken this speech? What did he do then? Dismissed the assembly.
He said, we are done.
And we're done, see. Notice he just didn't want any part of it, and he wanted to do things decently and in order. Roman governor, or not a governor, but a mayor, town clerk. All right, we'll stop right there. Next, Lord willing, we'll take up chapter 20 next Thursday. Do you have any other comments or questions before we close? All right, Brother Dave, would you stand and close in a word of prayer, if you would, please, sir?
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee that in Your Word, in the Old Testament, we have the perfect law, and that a lot of this law has been carried down through the years, through the Romans and even in our country. And we thank Thee for that there is law, but things are going from bad to worse in our country. And I pray that You would change things and that there might be reason and law in our country. And I thank Thee for the word that we have, that here's a man, Paul, who was willing to stand up for the Lord and to witness to all these people in spite of the fact that he could have been killed there. And I thank Thee that there has been men of God who have preached the gospel and led people to the Lord in spite of the fact that they could be persecuted and killed. And I pray that You would help us to have the boldness we need to not be afraid when we're witnessing for You. And I pray that You would guide us today, that we might follow Your will and serve You well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you for coming.
Welcome.